Welcome to Confessions by Banana Ketchup. Followed to my house from my friend's house by an evil entity and physically attacked. About 6 years ago, when I was 24, I was living in a house with a bunch of roommates. My room was in the basement. It was always cold and wet down there because it was always flooding, and I hated sleeping there, so I would often sleep over at my friend's house where they lived together. They liked it when I slept over, and we tended to party a lot and stuff like that, as you do in your early 20s. When I first started hanging out there, my best friend Mark, whose room was in their basement, would always complain about the entity down there. Once when he started talking about it, I said I don't feel anything, and as soon as I said that, we heard loud banging from the other side of the wall, as if someone was pounding on it as hard as they could. I remember I was laughing because that was, I guess, my way of convincing myself that there was nothing to be afraid of. But Mark would always tell me that I was dumb for laughing and acting flippant, and he could tell that it was antagonizing to the spirit. Let me be clear, I was never an unbeliever, in fact quite the opposite, but I do get scared, so that was my way of dealing with it in that particular situation. Okay, so I think this is where I went wrong and got the spirit following me. One night when we were drinking at their place, Mark had to go into their creepy cellar room at the very end of the hall in their basement. I can't remember what was in there that he needed, but it was like to flip a breaker or something, and he was scared to go in. I hadn't even known that room existed until this moment, even though I was there like every night. I assumed it was just a closet, so I asked him to show me what was so scary about it. So we go in, and it's pitch dark room with jagged cement floors like an old cellar, and there's literally a baby's shoe, but it's super old and it's attached into the cement. I realize saying this part, it sounds made up like a horror movie cliche, but that is what was there, lol. Like I said, we had been drinking, so even though Mark told me not to go near it, I had to get a closer look, and I actually touched it because I was so confused about why it was inside the cement like that, and was just shocked what I was seeing. If we were really in a horror movie, I definitely would be a fool who dies first. So anyways, I don't know how much time passes after that, but sometime in the next month or two, I'm sleeping at my own house, but I'm dreaming that I'm in their house, haha. And in the dream, I start feeling something I never felt before in a dream, which is a physical force pressing on me and trying to rip my phone from my hand. The sensation of actually fighting against something in a dream and feeling the pressure and force from it was new to me. I'm just standing in their kitchen fighting this invisible force, then I run into my friend Jamie's room beside the kitchen to tell her what's happening, and when I stand in her doorway, I see my own mirror on her wall, like that I had in my own bedroom at the time. For context, it wasn't an old or pre-owned mirror. I bought it with my mom at Home Sense when I was in high school, and it's a distinct mirror with a really ugly swirly gold frame that I thought was really cute at the time. As I'm standing there trying to talk to her, there's a guy who looks the same age as us peeking at me from inside the mirror and smiling, but in a really scary, evil way, like he's taunting me. I still remember exactly his face. He was super muscular and was wearing a colored polo shirt. To me, he straight up looked like someone who would drug your drink. And he was peeking from like inside the mirror, but from the side of it, kind of as if he was peeking around at me from behind a door, if that makes sense. So at this point, I wake up and of course I'm staring directly into this mirror in real life in my own room. After this experience, I started experiencing attacks in my room when I would sleep there. I actually lost a lot of sleep, and it severely affected my mental health because I found it impossible to sleep at my own house, and there was an undeniable evil energy in my room that almost felt like a buzzing electricity or sound waves. I was also at my own house more at that point because my ex and I had gotten back together, so we would sleep at my house together occasionally. Once I was sleeping and my ex was over, but he had already been fast asleep for hours. I was turned away from him and closed my eyes, and I felt someone grab my thumb and violently yank my hand upward from where it was resting on my pillow. Then, the next night, I was sleeping there by myself, and I stayed up until the sun came up, trying to sleep, and was terrified to close my eyes, but was feeling so ragged and tired. I would always turn away from the mirror beside my bed for obvious reasons, so I was turned on my side, and again the second I closed my eyes, I felt someone strike me with 2 fingers right in the middle of my forehead. Obviously, the next night after that, I did not want to spend the night there, so I went to sleep at Mark's. You'd wonder why I would want to go there of all places, lol, but I was just used to sleeping there and weirdly always felt safe there cause Mark had a way of acting unbothered. Also, he would smudge with sage whenever the spirit was acting out and it always seemed to help for the time being. So anyway, I go over and I haven't mentioned anything to him up until that point about my dream or anything like that because I felt that I would give it power by talking about it. But I brought it up finally, and when I told him about my dream, he was freaked out because I described the guy as being a bro with a polo shirt, and he said he had seen the same person. Shortly after that, I actually moved apartments, and I maybe could have ditched that gold mirror. I finally got rid of it when I moved again 2 years ago, but nothing really seemed to follow me from the basement apartment. There was one time where I had really bad sleep paralysis that felt like something was whipping me around my room, literally as if I was in the middle of a tornado. But it didn't really feel the same as those other attacks, being that they happened while I was awake. I've told people about this experience a couple times, and they seem skeptical that this happened while I was awake. They think I was sleeping, lol, but I know that I was wide awake. I've had sleep paralysis a million times, so I know the difference. I guess that's why I wanted to post and share the story, because I'm hoping I can feel validated by people who have experienced similar things. And I'm wondering if anyone has any insight or anything I wrote that maybe jumped out at you. Thanks for reading. Thank you, Margie Crab 10, the author. The Man with No Eyes. When I was a kid, about 12-13 years old or so, I wasn't in the best home situation. I lived with a physically and emotionally abusive parent who would beat my twin brother and attempt to do so to me. I spent a lot of time running away from home, hiding in my room or walking the streets at night. My home, outside of the terror of my parent, wasn't the safest either. It was a 3-bedroom ranch, no larger than 900 square feet, with front and side doors that no longer locked correctly. Even with a deadbolt, one good push and it would swing open. My brother and I often slept in the living room with a baseball bat, just in case someone tried coming in. One night, while sleeping in the living room, our side door began to shake violently. At first, I thought it was our parent coming in from the garage, and did my best to pretend to be asleep. Unlike my parent, who would have pushed the door open by now, the door was still closed despite the shaking. I tried to wake my brother up, but he wouldn't get up, so I grabbed the bat and walked to the door myself. Since it was one of those kitchen doors with the window, I left the lights off and crouched to avoid being seen. I could see the gold doorknob being jerked back and pushed forward rapidly. It was never turned, so I relaxed. It was probably a friend from down the street messing with us. I peeked through the curtain to see who held the knob, but quickly noticed the screen door over the main door was still closed, which meant the doorknob was sealed behind its latch. No one should have been able to grab it without at least cracking the screen door. When I looked past the screen door, I noticed that there wasn't anyone there. In disbelief, I opened the curtain more and looked all around the door, which was still shaking from the knob. I decided that this had to be someone messing with us. It had to be. I didn't know how or why, but it was. I grabbed the doorknob with my free hand, but released it almost just as quickly. It was freezing to the touch, as if someone had stuck it in the freezer. Fed up and annoyed, I turned on the porch light and swung open the curtain, ready to catch them in act. To my horror, there wasn't anyone there. Like I had suspected, the screen door was closed all the way, and the frame at the bottom covered up the doorknob. There was no one hiding by the car, on the side of the house, or ducking on the porch, yet the knob was still shaking. Lost for words and thoroughly terrified, I concede and turned back towards the living room. I had to wake up my brother. As I was rushing back to him, I suddenly heard silence. There was nothing. The knob had stopped. I turned to look back, and in front of my door, inside of my kitchen, was a tall, pale man with dark, shaggy, wavy hair. I was terrified. He must have been the one messing with the door, and now he was inside because I failed to see him outside. I kept my eyes on him as I held up my bat and started yelling for my brother. The man didn't react and took a couple of steps towards me. He seemed bored. His hands were in his pants pockets, and his shoulders were slouched slightly. My brother was finally starting to stir, and I felt like we were about to have to fight for our lives until the man tilted his head back. It was just enough to clear some of his shaggy bangs from his face. Where his eyes should have been, there were two rotten, sunken pits. I screamed like I had never screamed before. My brother sprang up from the sofa and immediately rushed to me, wondering what was wrong. I closed my eyes and dropped to my knees, covering my ears as he tried to comfort me. I don't know why I reacted this way instead of telling him that there was an intruder in the house and to grab the bat. The fear I felt was so overwhelming, I couldn't control my reaction. When I finally did manage to tell him, he looked for the man, but told me we were alone. There was no man. The door was still closed, and he told me the knob felt like it always did. This was not the only time I would encounter him, but this time, the first time, is what I wanted to share. Thank you, Walt Girl from 101, the author. Thank you for watching, everyone. If you already haven't, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any new episodes. See you again soon, and until then, please, be safe.